Hello there, this is Josh with CourtReserve, and this video is going to be an overview on lessons and instructors in the system. This video will be going over a collection of articles that we have in our knowledge base. So if you would like to take a look at those articles, you can always click the book icon in the top right corner. And on the knowledge base, if we scroll down, we will have this lessons and instructors collection if you'd like to take a look at those articles as well. You can also reach out to our customer success team by clicking the green button in the top right corner if you have any additional questions or just need any clarification on any of this information. So a majority of the topics that we will be going over today are going to take place under settings on the sidebar and on the instructor settings row. But at the second half of this video, we will be going back to the schedulers on the admin side and going over booking lessons on the admin panel, as well as a few different instructor schedulers that will be available. But first, we will get started on creating a lesson type in the system. So under the instructor settings row, we are going to have the lesson types page. And on the lesson types page, this is going to be where we can create, edit, or delete our lesson types. When we go to the create button, we will be able to create a name for this lesson. We will be able to decide the minimum and the maximum reservation time when booking this lesson. And if we choose a minimum or a maximum reservation time, we will be able to choose the duration increments. So for example, if my minimum is 30 and my maximum is 90 minutes, maybe I will want for members to be able to book for 30 minutes, an hour, or an hour and a half. If we set the increments to 30, that will allow the members to book in these 30-minute increments. But if I change it to 60, for example, and I change my minimum to 60 and my maximum to 120, this is saying that a member can book for 1 hour or for 2 hours, but they cannot book in that 30-minute increment for an hour and a half. We can also choose the minimum and the maximum number of players allowed to be booked for this specific lesson type. So if this is a minimum and a maximum of 2, that would mean that 2 members have to be booked on this lesson type in order for it to be bookable. We can apply the minimum and the maximum rule based on the number of courts. We can choose the background and the text color that this lesson type will display in on the scheduler. And then we can also choose the tax rate and the revenue category if you are using either of those in your organization. We can also require a court to be added to this lesson in order for it to be bookable. And we can also allow resources or ball machines as well. If you have any reservation custom fields, you would also be able to add those custom fields to this specific lesson type. And whenever this lesson type is getting booked, these additional custom fields will show up when it is being booked. So from there, we can hit the save button. And if we ever need to edit or delete a lesson type, we will be able to do that from this table. So after the lesson types, if we go back to settings and the instructor settings row, the next page here is going to be the instructors page. And this is going to be where we can create instructors in the system. This will take us to the system users page, but specifically the instructors tab. So when we're here, if we need to create, edit, or delete an instructor, this will be the page to do that. When we are creating an instructor, we will be able to choose if they are an admin or a sub-admin. So if they are an admin, they will have full permissions on the admin side of CourtReserve. If they are a sub-admin, we will be able to pick and choose the permissions that they do or do not have on their account. I'll mark them as a sub-admin so I can show you the sub-admin permission list once we get further along this page. But here we would be able to put the first name, the last name, and the email address on this instructor's account. And we can also add a phone number if we have that as well. Once you have some instructors or some system users that are already created in the system, whenever you are creating a new system user, you do have the option of copying settings from another user. So if you have some instructors that are sub-admins in the system already, and they already have their permissions configured the way that you would like them to have it, we do have the option of just copying all of those settings from that other user. That will make the setup a lot easier on your end rather than having to manually pick and choose those permissions for multiple accounts. From there, we can choose the instructor types. And if we do not have a specific instructor type already created in the system, we would be able, when searching this, to create that new instructor type if we search a name and it's not already in the system. But on the next page under instructor settings, I'll also show you how you can create those instructor types as well. We can also choose the instructor background and text color from this page, and then we can pick and choose the allowed lesson types and the allowed event categories that they will be eligible to instruct on. So if we do not add private lesson for 2, for example, in this field, when we are trying to assign this instructor to that lesson, it's going to let us know that they are not eligible to instruct that specific lesson type. So we'll want to make sure that if there are select lesson types that these instructors can book, that we are picking and choosing them here, but there will also be another page under instructor settings where we can set up those parameters. So the next setting here is going to be the instructor availability, which we will need to hit save on in order to see this table. So let me go over to another instructor I already have created, and I will show you how the instructor availability can be set up. So once we get to the instructor availability page, we are going to have a section for each day of the week. And then from there, we would be able to add these different availability intervals to this account. Something that is important to note here is that if we don't have any intervals set up on a day, this instructor will show as available for that entire day. If we want to mark an instructor as unavailable on Monday, for example, we can use the upcoming unavailable times. We can create an unavailable time here and say they are not available on Saturdays. We can go to the next upcoming Saturday. We can choose our open and our close times as the start and the end times here. And then we can set up a weekly recurrence. So we can say every 1 week on Saturdays, we want this instructor to be unavailable. And then from there, we can set up a recurrence rule that ends after 99 days, since that is the largest amount of recurrences that we can make in the system. If we need to set any exception dates, we can do that from this page as well. So if there is, one Saturday that maybe this instructor is available, we will be able to set that up on the exception dates field. And then if there are any other instructors that are not available on this day, we can add multiple instructors when we are creating this unavailable time. So that covers times of the day where the instructor is not available. If an instructor is available for specific time periods of the day, we can click the plus button on that day of the week. And from there, we would be able to choose the from and the to time for that interval. So if we have multiple intervals in the day, but there is a break in between, maybe we can set up multiple intervals here. Like for example, here I have 2 different intervals where this instructor is available on Tuesdays. And that would be how we cover any amount of break time or unavailability that may be in between those 2 intervals. We can also check to not apply it on all Mondays, and we can select specific dates here. So if there is one Monday where an instructor is actually available from 5 to 6, where they typically aren't, we can say just for that specific date, we are going to have this instructor be available for this time range. From there, we have some additional settings that have to do with an instructor's availability. But below that, we are going to have the sub-admin permission list. So this is going to be where we pick and choose what permissions this instructor has in the system. So if they are able to create reservations or lessons, we can check that off. If we want them to edit any reservations or have the ability to delete any reservations, we can check or uncheck those permissions. For these type of permissions like editing or deleting reservations, we do also have this owned only option. And if that is checked, that will mean that only lessons that are booked by this specific instructor can be edited. So if another instructor books a lesson with just owned only checked, this instructor would not be able to edit. And this is based on who is booking that lesson. If an instructor is only allowed to delete their owned reservations, they would only be able to delete or cancel reservations that they had booked themselves on their account. There's a long list of permissions here. So if we want to, for example, give them the ability to email or text event registrants, or if we want to give them the ability to approve reservations or lessons, or even just their own lessons, these will all be permissions that we can give them. So I definitely recommend taking a look at these permissions and just seeing which ones will fit the parameters that we want to give this specific instructor. Once we scroll down to the bottom of this page, we will have the Save Changes button. And once we click that, then this instructor will be created in the system. And if we go back over to the settings page and we go over to the instructor settings row, the next page we'll go over is instructor types. Instructor types are going to be different labels that we can put on each instructor that is created. And for example, if you have multiple sports at your facility and you have different instructors for those different sports, this is where we can create that label and say, this is a pickleball pro, or this is a tennis pro. This is going to be where we can sort of differentiate the different types of instructors you may have at your facility. And once we hit the create page, it's just going to be that name field for us to create that instructor type. The next page here is going to be the scheduling restrictions, and this is really where we are going to be able to decide which lesson types each instructor is eligible to instruct for, and same goes with event categories. Again, if we have lesson types that are specifically for pickleball and lesson types that are specifically for tennis, and we have pickleball and tennis pros, this is going to be where we say, I don't want this instructor to be eligible to book for these lesson types. I only want them to be eligible to be assigned to these specific lesson types. And same goes for event categories. From there, the next page on the instructor settings row, we can actually navigate to from any of these three pages since we have tabs for them. But the next one will be instructor pricing. So this is going to be where we set up the lesson pricing for each instructor under each lesson type and also under each membership type. So here we will be able to choose that pricing and we will be able to choose the calculation type. So is that going to be an hourly or a fixed rate? We can also use this field all the way on the left if we need to quickly set up a price for all membership types. Something important to note here is the price that we are setting up for lessons here is going to be a per person rate. So this is not the price of the entire lesson that then gets broken down by the number of players. This is how much each individual on a lesson would be charged. All right, so next I will be going over the Book a Pro setup and how to create that Book a Pro scheduler. So by default in CourtReserve, members will not be able to book lessons from their account on the member portal. That's going to be something that can only be booked from the admin side. But if you would like to give members the ability to book lessons, we will need to set up a Book a Pro scheduler. So if we go to the Book a Pro setup tab, or if we go to instructor settings and click the Book a Pro page, we are going to have this table here where we can see all of the Book a Pro schedulers that have already been created. If you do not have one yet, you are going to be brought directly to the create page. On the Book a Pro setup page, we are going to be able to set up the name on the admin side and the name on the member portal for this scheduler. And we will be able to pick and choose the instructor types, the instructors, the lesson types, and the lesson types that are requiring approval. So depending on how many instructors you have, how many sports you have, or how many different lesson types you have, you may want to create a scheduler for each individual instructor at your facility. Or maybe if you have a few different lesson types, you'll want to create that semi-private and that private lesson as individual schedulers. This is really just going to depend on what you are offering at your facility, how many instructors you have, and things like that. But just know that you will be able to sort of pick and choose and customize this scheduler in the way that will best fit your facility's needs. If you want to set up a manual approval where every time a member books a lesson, an admin would need to approve that lesson on the admin side, we can choose all lesson types under this field. And for any instance where you need to approve something on the admin side, we can go to the to-do page on the sidebar. And if there is anything that needs to be approved, we will see this red dot right here. We can then choose the court preference, so we can decide if the system will automatically pick a court for this lesson. We can allow members to select that court themselves. We can make the court optional. So if a member has any preference, they do have the option of selecting it, but they don't need to. And we can show no courts and require no court selection. This would really be used in the case where for all lessons, an admin is the one that is deciding the court. But if we want members to book those lessons from their account, we can still give them access to the scheduler. We can also choose the courts that will be available for lessons, and then we can choose the schedule booking type. So we can choose view and scheduling lessons or view only. So if we only want to show members a calendar that shows the available times, but we still want them to call the front desk and schedule that lesson through the phone, we can still set up a view only scheduler so they can see when that availability is. We can choose which memberships and which member groups will be able to see this specific scheduler here. And then we can also choose if the Book a Pro scheduler is going to be viewable for non-logged in users. So if lessons are a really big thing at your facility and you want for someone that maybe doesn't have a membership yet to take a look at that scheduler and use that as a point to make them create their account, we can show the scheduler here for those non-logged in users. We can choose if payment profile or upfront payment are going to be required when a member is booking a lesson on the member portal. And we can also choose the time in advance an instructor can be scheduled and the days in advance to show instructor availability, very similarly to what we have on any type of reservation or court scheduler. Same with the settings below, we can choose the time to open the next available reservation date, and we can also allow X minutes of buffer time before scheduling a lesson. Then we have some settings that just have to do with the intervals and how the time slots display on the scheduler. And below that, we are going to have some date pickers where we can pick and choose the dates that this scheduler will show on the member portal. If we are having a scheduler set up that's going to show every day of the year, we don't need to worry about these settings. But if we only have lessons available for a select date range throughout the year, we can choose the from date and the to date for when the scheduler will show. And then the scheduler starting and ending dates will be the actual dates that members can pick a lesson from. We can prevent sandwich time for X amount of minutes, so that will allow us to prevent a gap from being created on the scheduler and creating that small window of unbookable time. And then we can choose if we're going to hide lesson details. Maybe we don't want to show the member name on the scheduler and we just want a gray block that says reserved. We can allow lesson cancellations if we want to set up a parameter for that. And we can also allow lesson edits if you want to give those permission to members. When we check off all of these settings here, there are going to be some additional settings that come with them. So you'll be able to set up some parameters there. And then we can choose the open time and the close time for the days of the week. And we can also close off entire days if we need to. So that goes over how we set up a Book a Pro scheduler. Again, that is a scheduler that is going to show on the member portal and allows members to book lessons directly from their account. Next, I'm going to jump over to the admin side scheduler, and I'm going to go over how you can create a lesson from the admin panel. So if we're on the expanded or the consolidated scheduler, we can pick the court that we would like to book on. And when we are on this reservation page here, the first setting is going to be the type, and we can choose the lesson option. That will allow us to pick from our lesson types. And from there, we would be able to choose the start time and the end time. And we would also be able to set up a recurrence rule. So if you want to set up a recurring schedule for lessons for specific members, we can always do that in the system. Like the recurrent setting in other spots of the system, we'll be able to set up a daily, weekly, monthly, or custom recurrence. So if we want to set up a lesson on a weekly basis, we can have this recur every 1 week. If we want it to be every other week, we can have it recur every 2 weeks. And then we can choose the days of the week this should repeat on. And then from there, we can choose either the amount of occurrences before this should end, or we can choose the end by date. So if a member maybe wants to set up 10 lessons on a weekly basis, we can choose X amount of dates here. Or if they want to set up recurring lessons until the end of September, for example, we can use the end by date. From here, we can choose the instructor that is going to be assigned to this lesson here. And we can also search and add for those players. And from there, if we need to add any additional information, if we need to adjust the courts, we'll be able to do that. So next, I will be going over a few different schedulers that we have in the system for instructors. The first one that I will go over is My Schedule. This is going to be a scheduler that you will only see if you are marked as an instructor in the system. If you're an admin, but you're not assigned the instructor role, you will not see this. But from here, they will be able to take a look at their weekly schedule, and it will just be their schedule and no other instructors. So if they need to manage their unavailable time, if they need to adjust or create any lessons, they can do that directly from the My Schedule page, and that will be a scheduler they can see on their mobile app as well. The other option is the instructor's scheduler, and this is going to be a scheduler where we can take a look at the availability for all instructors in our organization. So if this is a front desk and somebody comes up and they would like to book a lesson with a specific instructor, or maybe they call into the front desk can use the instructor scheduler if they would like a view that shows all of the different instructors at an organization. And this way they can take a look at all of the other instructors' availability and helping that member find a time to book that lesson. The last thing that I will go over is how we can assign instructors to events. So if we go to events on the sidebar and we go to create or we edit an event, when we go to the general info tab, and we scroll down a bit, there is going to be a field for selecting event instructors. We'll be able to add one or more instructor to this event here, and this will assign this instructor to this event for every occurrence that is set up for this event here. So maybe there's a case where you have one instructor that's assigned to this event, but for a specific date, we actually need to edit the instructor on that date. If we need to edit the instructor for a specific event date and we don't want this edit to be done to the entire occurrence for the event, we can scroll back up to the Dates tab. And when we click the pencil icon on a specific date, we can adjust the instructor here. You will notice now that this instructor is assigned to this specific date, but it's not impacting any other dates. So that would be how we assign an instructor to a specific event date, but not every single occurrence. So that goes over lessons and instructors in the system. Again, this video is an overview of articles that we have in our knowledge base. So if you click the book icon in the top right corner, we will have a collection of articles called Lessons and Instructors. And if you have any additional questions, always feel free to reach out to our customer success team by clicking the green button in the top right corner.